You are worth $11 billion, and nobody knows your name. Not nobody. A handful of lawyers know it, two accountants, a personal security coordinator who has worked for you for 9 years and who you trust with your physical safety and nothing else. A woman in Geneva who manages the foundation that gives away enough of your money each year that you qualify technically for a tax designation that requires no further disclosure. That is the complete list of people who know both your name and the approximate scale of what you control. Everyone else in your life knows a version of you, a partial, carefully constructed version that gives them exactly the information required for the specific function they serve, and nothing beyond that. The billionaires you have heard of are not the billionaires who matter most. This is the first thing you understood a long time ago, and it is the understanding that shaped every decision after it. The ones on the lists, the ones who give interviews and appear on magazine covers and testify before governments and launch rockets for reasons that seem to combine genuine curiosity with an appetite for a specific kind of public attention. They are wealthy. Some of them are extraordinarily wealthy, but visibility is a form of vulnerability. And the wealthiest people you have ever known personally have been, without exception, people whose names you would not recognize and whose faces you have never seen in a newspaper. You are one of them. You chose to be one of them. The choice was made early, deliberately, and has been maintained with a consistency that has required sacrificing things you do not often think about directly. You grew up with money. Not this kind of money, the kind of money that is comfortable and invisible in the way that upper middle class comfort is invisible, the kind that pays for good schools and good neighborhoods, and a set of assumptions about how the world works that most people never get to make. Your father was a successful corporate lawyer. Your mother managed a family trust that had been accumulating quietly for 3 generations. You understood from a young age that old money and new money were not the same thing, and that the distinction mattered in ways that went beyond manners or taste. Old money had learned over generations to be quiet. New money had not learned this yet. You were drawn to the quiet. You studied economics at a university where approximately a third of your classmates were the children of people who would later appear in the same financial databases that would one day fail to contain your name. You were not the most intelligent person in your cohort. You were the most patient. There is a difference that compounds over time. Your classmates who were brilliant went into finance and made extraordinary salaries and bought visible things with those salaries: apartments, cars, status markers that communicated their success to the people around them. You watched this and felt something that was not quite contempt and not quite pity, and was perhaps closest to a clinical recognition that visibility and wealth were being confused for the same thing by people who should have known better. Your first investment was in a company nobody had heard of, in a sector nobody was watching, solving a problem nobody had publicly identified yet. You were 24. The return 4 years later was not spectacular by the standards of venture capital mythology. It was precise. It was the kind of return that comes from understanding something correctly rather than from being lucky. And the distinction mattered to you then as it still matters to you now. You reinvested. You did it again. You built a pattern of finding things before they were found by the people who found things for a living. And this pattern, compounded over 15 years of careful and entirely private operation, became the 11 billion. Not 11 billion in cash. Not 11 billion in any single asset class. 11 billion distributed across a structure so complex and so deliberately obscured that the number itself is an approximation. Your own approximation, made by your 2 accountants twice a year, in a document that exists in 2 encrypted copies and nowhere else. The actual figure is probably higher. You have stopped caring about the precision at the upper end. The precision matters at the operational level. How much is liquid, how much is deployed, how much is available within 48 hours if something requires a rapid response. Beyond that, at this scale, the number is simply a measure of optionality. How much you can do, how many things are possible, how much of the world is, in a practical sense, within reach. Here is what $11 billion actually feels like from the inside. It does not feel like security. You expected it to early on, and it does not. Security is a sensation that belongs to people who have something to lose, that they can name and quantify. What you have is so large and so distributed and so insulated from ordinary risk that the thing that replaced security, the thing that lives where security used to be, is closer to altitude. A sense of operating at a level where the ordinary forces that govern most lives simply do not apply with the same weight. This is not arrogance, it is closer to physics. Gravity affects everyone, but it affects a satellite differently than it affects a person standing on the ground. You are not above the world. You are at a different orbital distance from it. You do not own things the way most people own things. Your legal name appears on almost nothing. The apartment where you spend most of your time in the city you consider home is held by a trust that is managed by a company that is owned by another company whose beneficial ownership is structured through a jurisdiction that does not require disclosure. The same structure, with variations, applies to the property in 3 other countries, to the aircraft, to the 2 vehicles that your security coordinator manages. When you sit in a restaurant and you eat in restaurants, ordinary ones, without reservation or advance notice, because the best cover is simply the behavior of someone who requires no special treatment. The person across the table from you sees a man in his mid-40s in unremarkable clothes, eating unremarkable food. This is not a performance, or rather, it was a performance once, and then it became simply how you live. And the distinction has dissolved so completely that you no longer experience it as concealment. The money works through intermediaries. Everything works through intermediaries. You have never personally signed a contract for any transaction above a certain threshold, a threshold that would surprise most people by being relatively low, because your signature on a document creates a record, and records create connections, and connections create a map, and a map of your financial activity would tell a story that you have decided the world does not need to read. Your 2 accountants act through their own structures. Your investment decisions are communicated through a single trusted intermediary, a man you have known for 20 years, who manages a family office that officially represents several clients, of which you are one and of which he never speaks. The decisions are yours. The paper trail leads to him. You have no social media presence. You have never given an interview. You have attended events, the kind of events where important things are decided over dinners that are never reported and conversations that are never recorded, but always in a capacity that allows you to be identified, if at all, as someone's advisor or guest, rather than as a principal. The rooms where real decisions are made are full of people whose names you do not know and who do not know yours. And this mutual anonymity is not a barrier. It is the social contract of that world. You are known in those rooms by the quality of what you say and by the reputation that precedes you through the specific channels through which reputation travels in that world. You do not need a face or a name to have influence at this level. You need to be right about things. You have been right about things consistently enough that the people who matter have learned to listen when you speak without needing to know anything further about you. The structure has a cost, not a financial cost, a different kind. You have one close relationship in your life, one person who knows enough of the truth to constitute real intimacy rather than managed proximity. This was not planned. You did not intend to allow it. It happened over several years of a friendship that kept finding ways to go deeper than you were trying to keep it, until the depth had passed the point where maintaining the managed version would have required actively lying to someone who did not deserve to be lied to. You have not regretted allowing this. You have also not repeated it. Your children, you have 2 from a marriage that ended with precision and without acrimony, structured through agreements that protect everyone's privacy, including theirs. Know a partial version of you. They know you are wealthy. They do not know the scale. They have been given enough to be comfortable and not enough to be destroyed by it, which is a calculation every parent at this level makes and which different people make differently. You have made it conservatively. Your children have jobs, real ones. They do not know what the jobs would be without the doors that your invisible influence has occasionally and quietly opened for them, doors they believe they found themselves. You have decided this is a kindness rather than a deception. You revisit this decision periodically. You always reach the same conclusion, and you are never entirely satisfied with it. There are people who would like to find you, not in the sense of physical danger. Your security is managed carefully, and the coordinator has never had to escalate beyond what she describes as a precautionary repositioning, but in the sense of financial exposure. Regulators in 3 jurisdictions are in the early stages of building frameworks that would, if completed, require disclosure of beneficial ownership at a level that would make your current structure untenable. 2 investigative journalists working independently in different countries, and you know this because you have people who monitor exactly this kind of thing, are following threads that are not yet connected, but that, if connected, would point toward the outer edges of your structure without reaching its center. A former business associate, a man you worked with briefly 15 years ago, and who has since moved into a different and significantly more visible kind of wealth, has been asked questions in the context of an unrelated investigation about transactions from that period. He does not know enough to tell them anything material, but he knows enough to tell them where to look. And where to look is not where you are, but it is closer than you would prefer. You are not afraid. Fear is a response to threats with defined parameters, a confrontation, a deadline, a specific danger you can see the shape of. What you are is precise. You are running the calculation with the same patience and the same systemic understanding that has defined every decision you have made since you were 24 years old in a room full of brilliant people, and the only quality you had that they lacked was the willingness to wait. The structure will need to evolve. It always needs to evolve. This is not a crisis. It is maintenance, the permanent condition of operating at this level. New entities will need to be established. Some existing ones will need to be dissolved cleanly. The journalist's threads will need to dead end in ways that feel like the natural end of an investigation rather than the managed end of one, which is a different and more delicate problem. The former associate's proximity to the outer edges of your structure will need to be managed in a way that is neither dramatic nor visible, because drama and visibility are the things you have spent 20 years avoiding. You are sitting in the apartment whose ownership traces to a company you have never signed for. It is a Tuesday morning. The coffee is good because you have always spent money on small things that improve daily quality: coffee, mattresses, shoes, and nothing on things that communicate status to other people. There is no art on the walls that anyone would recognize. The view through the window is of a city going about its ordinary business at 9 in the morning. You open an encrypted document that contains this morning's summary from the intermediary. Positions, movements, the early indicators on a sector you have been watching for 8 months that are finally beginning to tell the story you expected them to tell. The timing is almost right. Not yet. 2 more months, perhaps 3. Patience. The thing that compounded when intelligence did not. You are $11 billion. You are nobody. These two facts are not in tension with each other. They are the same fact expressed differently. The invisibility is not the cost of the wealth. The invisibility is the method. The invisibility is the reason the wealth reached this scale and continues to grow in the quiet, at the altitude, where ordinary forces do not apply with the same weight. You close the document, you finish the coffee, you have a call in 20 minutes, a voice call through a service that routes through 3 countries and auto-deletes after the session, with the intermediary to discuss timing on the sector play. The call will take 12 minutes. Nothing about it will be recorded anywhere that can be found. After the call, you will walk out into the city. You will not be recognized. You will not be followed. You will move through the streets of the city like anyone else, unremarkable, unrecorded, invisible, and the 11 billion will move with you, silently, at the orbital distance where it lives. You have been the billionaire nobody knows exists for long enough that you no longer experience it as a role. It is simply what you are, and what you are is very, very good at remaining nothing.